Hi, welcome to this edition of Personal Transformation. My name is Bill Covert, and today we're here to talk about probably the most important attribute in raising your happiness and joy in life, and it's about raising your self-esteem. Today we have a nationally known and acclaimed author with us. His name is Dr. Joe Rubino. Dr. Joe is the author of 10 books and 2 audio sets ranging in topics from self-esteem and how to maximize joy and fulfillment and productivity in business. He's an acclaimed speaker and course leader. He teaches, when he teaches people, they get inspired to bring out the greatness inside of them. And I'm glad you're with us today, and I want you to take out your pen and paper because Joe has a lot of tools, tips, and strategies to share with you to maximize and raise your self-esteem. Joe is also a best-selling author. His programs are available in 23 languages and in 53 countries. Dr. Joe is the author of the many books. Here are a few of them. The Self-Esteem Book, The Success Code #1 and Success Book #2, with subchapters like 29 Principles for Achieving Maximum Abundance, Success, Charisma, and Personal Power in Your Life. That's something that can go a long way in your life. He's also authored The Magic Lantern, which is a fable about leadership, personal excellence, and empowerment. Another one of those fables is The Legend of the Light Bearers, which is about personal reinvention and global transformation. And by the way, Joe's fable trilogy is currently in development to become a feature film. So look forward to seeing that. Dr. Joe Rubino is the CEO of the Center for Personal Reinvention, which can be found at centerforpersonalreinvention.com, an organization which is committed to personal excellence and empowerment for all people. His work has impacted over 2 million people through self-esteem work, personal and group coaching, and leadership development. His vision, which I find totally inspiring, is to personally impact the lives of 20 million people worldwide to be their best and to shift the paradigm around resignation. That is that anyone can change their lives and it can affect their positive change in their own lives if they believe they can. So sit up straight, take a deep breath, and we'll be right back with Dr. Joe. And if you have your pen handy, a way to get more resources for Joe is selfesteemsystem.com. We'll be right back with Dr. Joe. We are ready. We are with Dr. Joe Rubino. And Dr. Joe, I welcome you.
Thank you. It's great to be here, Bill.
It's very exciting. So now let's dive right in. You, Dr. Joe, as the author of the Self-Esteem Book, you certainly are a champion at championing people's lives to greater happiness and joy. Can you share with us why is that so important to you, and where does your passion come from?
Well, as a life coach, Bill, for the last 19 years, what I noticed was that in coaching more than 1,000 different individuals, whenever they were struggling and suffering, whenever people were not abundant, or when they were living in scarcity, whenever they were ineffective in their communication, whenever they were unhappy or unfulfilled, whenever their relationships were strained, it all pointed back to the same underlying cause, and that cause was diminished self-esteem. And so through the years, what I started to notice was that self-esteem was really the culprit behind poverty, behind abusive situations, behind alcohol and drug addiction, behind school dropouts, behind all sorts of ineffective behaviors, from divorce on one hand to war on the other. So it all pointed to lacking self-esteem as being the cause of the upsets in our lives. So my goal in life has been to support people to create structures to elevate their self-esteem. And that's how I came up with the self-esteem system, which is really a three-part process of helping people to complete their past, assess what's so right now in their present, and then design their future and choice.
I like it. Well, let me ask you this. How does low self-esteem affect the typical person, and is it really that pervasive?
Well, it's tremendously pervasive. Our research shows that at least 85% of the people walking on the face of this planet suffer from diminished self-esteem in at least one or more significant areas of their lives. And it typically affects people in one of two ways. Either it causes them to play small. In other words, they fear failure. They think that they're not good enough, unlovable, unworthy. And so what they do is they avoid risk. They avoid any situation that might put them in a situation where their lacking self-esteem will come up, and what they can't be with about being not good enough, not being lovable, not being, not belonging, not being capable of producing a result. Whatever they can't be with, they avoid any situation that might bring up that inevitable possibility. So by playing small and avoiding risk, they really try to shelter themselves from life, but there's a huge cost there. What they end up doing is they end up living a dimmed existence. They end up living a resigned life where it's not really able to produce the kind of things that we all want: the rich relationships, the fulfillment, the not only abundance, but the opulence, the happiness. All of the things that we all want aren't possible because we're playing safe. And when we play safe, we damage our communication, our charisma suffers. All of the things that we're able to attract to others, we can't even focus on because we're afraid of failing. So that's one way that diminished self-esteem plays out. The other is, for many people, it has them be on a treadmill where they're constantly trying to prove that they're good enough. And when that happens, it doesn't matter how much money they make, doesn't matter how many awards they achieve, what position in life or promotion at their job they attain, because no matter what they achieve, it's never good enough. They'll always find a way to invalidate themselves. You know, we're really good at finding the fault, the flaw in not only ourselves, but in others, so that when we cut ourselves down, we're more likely to cut others down. So that damages our relationships again, it minimizes our effectiveness, and it becomes a vicious cycle where we constantly try to prove that we're good enough, but in the end, we're constantly finding ways to invalidate ourselves. So we're really not kind with ourselves. We beat ourselves up, and of course, then we feel badly about who we are. And so the anger kicks in, the sadness kicks in, the fear kicks in, and then we try to take it out on other people because we're internally not satisfied. And so that's another cause of lacking self-esteem. Our relationships suffer, and as a result, all of the things that we want to attract into our lives, we don't manifest because we're doing things that self-sabotage.
Well, then, given that, where does low self-esteem have its origins?
Well, it all starts when we're very young, typically before the age of 6, but it can happen a little bit after that at times. And one of two things happens. Someone says or does something that we take as an insult. Maybe it's an abusive situation. Maybe it's an ethnic slur. Maybe it's a spanking or a bullying episode. And we buy into that. So that's one way that it happens, where someone says, "You're fat, you're ugly, you're stupid, you smell funny, nobody likes you." And we say, "You know what? I think you're right." And then we scan from that perspective onward to find evidence to support what it is that we thought is lacking about ourselves. The other way that it can happen is that someone says something harmlessly, like, "What's the matter?" Our parent might say, "What's the matter with you?" And we think, well, there is something the matter with me. Or maybe a friend says, "I'm going home now." And we think, well, you're going home because you don't like me, or because I don't belong, because there's something wrong with me. Or, we start to compare ourselves to others, and we constantly find the way that we are not up to speed. We invalidate ourselves. We see that we're not perfect, we're not good enough. And so no matter what we do moving forward from that initial upset time when we were very young, we start to color the glasses from which we see the world, so that the more evidence that we create, the stronger the vision becomes that we are defective, we are unlovable, we don't belong, we're flawed, we're somehow not good enough. And so the more we do it, the stronger it gets, so that after years or even decades, it becomes invisible to us. It becomes a fact in our brains that we are not good enough, no one likes us, we're defective, we can't do math, no one wants to be with us, we're bad at relationships, we're terrible socially. Whatever that version is, we constantly find a way to put ourselves down, and before we know it, we've created an overwhelming amount of evidence to reinforce that, and then it becomes just the way it is. That's the way I am, and we become resigned to it and think that there's no way out of that inevitability.
Well, so I have two young children. One just turned 3 and 4. Is it possible that I could be setting them up for shattering their beliefs and, I don't know, giving them the wrong
That's a great question.
data?
There's two aspects to that. All you can do is all you can do. And if you're loving and kind and nurturing and you build their self-esteem, then they're going to grow into adults with that high self-esteem typically. And no matter how good you are as a parent, the kids will make something up about themselves that has them feel not good enough, unlovable, unworthy in some respect. Now, of course, to the extent that you can love them and nurture them and champion them, then they have a much greater tendency and likelihood of growing up with high self-esteem. But no matter how good any parent is, there's still the possibility, we can't protect our children from every inevitable insult or bullying situation or any upset in the world. All we can do is keep reminding them that they're magnificent, that we love them, that they are good enough, that they're capable, that they're competent, that they're worthy, that they're significant, that they're important to us. And there's so many ways that we can constantly reinforce that they have within them everything that they need to be magnificent as they grow older. So there's a lot that you can do, and kids are still going to make up what they make up, as we all did.
That's so true. Well, now let me ask you this. If it all started when we were young, why is it that later on in life, why do we still have it, and why do we carry around that baggage, beating ourselves up with, I'm unlovable and I'm not good enough? Why do we do that? And is there ways to overcome that?
Well, that is another great question, because we do that because it's tied into our emotional response to life. What happens early on in life is that we make something up about ourselves, we make something up about other people, and we make something up about the world in general. And that diminishes our self-esteem because we make up that we're somehow imperfect, we don't fit in, we're not lovable, not good enough. We make up that other people are a certain way. Maybe they're cruel, maybe they're insensitive, maybe they're selfish, whatever that is. And that maybe the world is an insensitive place, it's a hard place, it's a place where there's struggle and suffering. So we make all of these things up, and it gives us an emotional charge in our bodies early on. The more that we reinforce that initial interpretation that we had, the more rigorous that charge becomes. It becomes actually a mood that we develop. And for most people, that mood is one of anger. And it can range from indignant anger to frustrated anger to raging anger. And if you look at the situation that our world is in today, you'll see that most people are addicted to anger. It's as if they have a needle in their arm like a heroin addict, and they're injecting the anger because they need their fix. And the more they inject the anger, the more they damage their relationships, the more they get to be right about the fact that nobody likes them, the more they get to see that they're ineffective in their communication, the more they get to be stuck. And for many people, that anger is unacceptable as a child, and it goes very quickly to either sadness or fear. So with sadness, for example, there are people who are addicted to sadness And we oftentimes call that spiritual depression, where people actually, there's 280 million people walking around our planet who are spiritually depressed, who are addicted to sadness. And we're not talking about a chemical imbalance here, or although that can come from all of this, but what happens is that the addiction to sadness translates into creating interpretations that make us sad. So just as someone who's addicted to anger will find evidence to get angry, someone that's addicted to anger will continually look for ways to react. They will attract people into their lives. They will attract situations that, quote unquote, make them angry because they have to get their fix. People that are sad will attract the same sorts of situations that make them sad. And we don't like being sad, but it gives us our mood. It gives us our fix. Same with fear. A great example of people who are addicted to fear is people that worry all of the time. If you're constantly addicted to worry, it doesn't matter what you worry about, you will scan for opportunities to worry. It could be about the economy, losing your job, the weather. It could be about the next illness that might come. It might be an earthquake or a tsunami. It might be about terrorists or flying. Doesn't matter because we continue to scan for opportunities to get our fix, to get the worry or the fear. And so if you're listening to us today, I'd invite you to identify what your predominant mood is. What is the addictive state where most of the upsets come from, where when you find yourself in an upset, what you're doing is you're going to anger or to sadness or to fear or to your version of that. And although we don't like being angry or sad or afraid, it keeps us stuck. It keeps us in this drama cycle of life. It's comfortable and it's familiar. And so when you ask me, why don't we get over it? It's because we are so accustomed to the injection in our system of the emotional state that has us interpret life in such a way to give us the fix that we're constantly going to the anger, the sadness, and the fear, whatever our name is on, whichever one of those states, so that we can be right about something, so that we can avoid responsibility. If for example, if we're addicted to anger, even though we don't like being angry, it gives us a temporary feeling of being powerful. So we can actually feel like we're better than someone else. We can dominate them. We can avoid being controlled by them. If we're addicted to sadness, then we get to feel sorry for ourselves. We get to be a victim. We get to say, well, you can't blame me, I'm depressed. So we get to avoid responsibility for our actions and for our magnificence. If we're addicted to fear, again, I was afraid. Not my fault, I was afraid. I worry, so I worry because there's lots to worry about. You can't blame me. We avoid responsibility, we stay stuck, and we continue to go through the same interpretation mechanism that keeps us firmly in low self-esteem and in interpretations that damage our relationships, kill our effective communication, and keep us in poverty, struggling, and suffering.
Wow. So it sounds like one of those keys is to take personal responsibility. Well, let me ask you this, because you mentioned that events that happened earlier in our lives affect the way that we go through life. So I'm sitting here thinking, well, what if I can't remember one of those shattering events? Then what?
Well, it doesn't really matter. For those people that can remember an early upset, we can go back and we can reinterpret that upset in a way where we reinterpret what they made up about themselves, what they made up about others, and what they made up about the world. But for those people that can't remember an early upset, all we have to do is look at the last time we were upset with our spouse, with our significant other, with a coworker, with a friend. And what we'll see is that same upset is played over and over again, so that if we are 30, 40, 50 years old, literally we've replayed the same upset in our lives thousands of times since we were first upset as a 4-year-old child. Let's say we made up that people were mean and that no one likes me. So over the decades, that constantly gets reinforced. So a great access to learning how we're being run in life is to look at keeping an upset journal. Anytime that you are upset, identify first your typical emotional reaction. Is it a form of anger, sadness, or fear? Then look at what did you make up about yourself, what did you make up about other people in the time of the upset, and what are the facts, and what interpretations did you create about those facts that don't support you. So we have it that people do things to us. People do things, and we think that they're to us, but everyone is doing whatever they know how to do to survive. They're doing the best they can to survive in how they picture to be a dangerous world. So by keeping the upset journal, we can separate out the facts, what was said or done, from what we made up about them that has us go to our mood, go to our emotional reactive state. And when we can separate them out, we can see that, well, Johnny said this, and I made up this about that, and it would support me to make this up instead about it. So we can actually create empowering interpretations that keep us high self-esteem, keep us empowered in our relationships, keep us effective in our communication, and keep us from getting into that soup where we constantly go down the same tunnel of damaging our relationships, damaging our communication, diminishing our self-esteem, going into our addictive emotional state, and keeping the suffering in place.
It's a great idea. Keep a journal. That's a great recommendation. Well, let me switch a little bit. Let me ask you about, we as humans are a little bit bent on perfectionism. How does that keep us stuck?
Well, that's really at the core of the misinterpretation mechanism and the negative self-talk. What happens is early on in life, we make something up about ourselves as to how we don't fit the paradigm of perfection. When we look at the people around us, we look at sports figures, they're more athletic than we are. We look at TV personalities and movie stars, they're prettier or more handsome than we are. We look at scientists and teachers and people on the news, and they're smarter than we are. And everybody we know seems to be wittier or more charismatic than we are. So we're constantly looking at how we compare to the standard of perfection, and everyone's doing the same. So even though we think that movie star has it all together, we don't know that their life is in the dumper and that they're on drugs or they're feeling terrible about their relationships and they can't be happy and fulfilled. But all we see is that they're beautiful, they seem to have it all together, so we compare ourselves unfavorably. And as long as we seek perfection, we're constantly invalidating ourselves, thinking that we have to be perfect to measure up, to be good enough, to be worthy. And that's just a trap door because we can never achieve perfection. All we can do is be excellent. And so if we give up our right to be perfect, we can now strive for excellence instead and know that we always have the ability to improve on how we were yesterday by being in personal development, by being more effective with people, by giving ourselves a break, by contributing our gifts to the world. We have all that ability if we recognize that we do.
That's great. And isn't that so true? A lot of times we as people will be watching the TV and we'll see these Hollywood stars and we think they have everything, they have the looks, they have the life. But really underneath that is a lot of low self-esteem. And I know that. Let me ask you this. How do we, as real human beings, get over that feeling of being unworthy?
Well, it's all about reinterpreting life in a way that gives us the benefit of the doubt. And there's really three qualities that we can interpret life from. Empathy is the first of those qualities. And when we can have empathy for what is it like in the other person's world, so that we can take the reactive nature out of our listening. So what I mean by that is that I said a few moments ago that people do the best they know how to do. And oftentimes that's not good enough, so we're not condoning bad behavior here. But what we're saying is that 99% of the time of an upset, the upset's about the person being upset, and not only 1% about the person supposedly causing the upset. So we can always reinterpret life in a way where when someone says or does something, we can ask ourselves, what is it like in John's world for him to say that to me? Or what must Susie be thinking for her to do something like that? So we take the upset away from here because, you know what? John and Susie are doing the best they know how to protect themselves. And even though we're not saying it's the right thing to do, because everyone makes mistakes and perhaps they're very dysfunctional in their behaviors, but what we can do is we can take that upset away so that they're not doing it to us. So when we can have empathy for what is it like over there to have them do something, we can take that reactive nature away from us. We can see that no one has the ability to press our buttons or pull our strings, because we always need to give someone permission to invalidate ourselves. Or we can end up invalidating ourselves and diminishing our own self-esteem. So that's always optional, and when we realize that it's optional, we can let life train us. We can start to look for the gifts in the problems that we encounter. We can start to welcome them and embrace them and look for the growth that will come out of the challenges in our lives, as opposed to allowing the problems to derail us, having them keep us stuck and small.
Well, Joe, that brings up a good point, because a lot of people that I talk to, myself included, we have something called negative self-talk. And that noise, that chatter is always in our heads. Am I good enough? Am I worthy? Blah, blah, blah. Down the line, is there a way that we can stop that self-talk, that negativity in our heads?
Well, half the battle is recognizing when the negative self-talker, which I like to picture as a little gremlin on my shoulder, is talking. Because many people confuse the self-talk with the intuition. And our intuition is based in our higher self. It's always right. It's always wise. It comes from love. And it's always something that will support us to listen to. When we listen to the self-talker's his or her purpose is to protect us from harm. So the self-talker is based in fear, in anger, and in sadness. And his or her job is to keep us from getting hurt. So when he says, you don't want to go to that party because remember, people don't like you. Or you don't want to take that chance at work because remember the last time you did and you made a fool of yourself or you failed. You better play small and you better play safe, because you know what happens to people that try something that they're not good at, and you know what, that you're not good at that, Bill. So
negative self-talk is it's prevalent.
We have to recognize our own version of that and know that one, what is our negative self-talk telling us? What is a new interpretation that we can create that has us empowered as opposed to disempowered? So thank you for sharing, and here's what I'm going to do to counteract that. So when the negative self-talker tells me, you're not good enough, nobody likes you, I'm going to say, thanks for sharing, shut up now, and you know what? People do like me, and here's why they like me, because I'm going to be concerned about other people. I'm going to contribute something to them. So we can be empowered to take responsibility for the very thing that we fear the most. The very thing that when the negative self-talker says you are this way, we can act out of a declaration of who we are as opposed to the evidence that we've created that says, I'm stupid, I'm unlovable, I'm unworthy, no one likes me, whatever that is. We can instead say, I'm declaring myself to be a great friend, someone who's concerned for the welfare of others, someone who's a contributor, someone who's loving, creative, whatever that is. And we can act from that declaration, and we can create a whole new possibility for our lives by stepping into the declaration and saying, okay, if I was creative, how would I create? If I was empowering, how would I empower you now? If I was inspirational, what could I say to inspire you to make your day better? So we can step into a whole new possibility that has us really be the person that we've decided to be, as opposed to the person that the negative self-talker tells us that we are. The other thing that we can do, Bill, is we can start to replace the negative input into our lives. So if we're attracting negative people into our lives, we can take responsibility for attracting positive people. We can be with people who are into personal development instead of violence. We can hang out with different people who are into championing people and supporting people to be their best instead of cutting people down. We can get out of abusive situations. We can start to manage what goes into our brains so that if we're watching violent television all the time, we can start to maybe listen to empowering shows. We can start to do things that support the person that we've decided to be, as opposed to being at the effect of whatever is thrown at us in the world.
Whoa, now that's some powerful stuff right there, because that's acting as if and stepping into that role and telling that negative gremlin on your shoulder, listen, this is my life, this is where I'm going, and be empowered and step into that role. I love it. So, well, let's take that to another level. You talk a lot about emotional awareness. Can you share with us why is that important?
Well, that is the glue that keeps the whole misinterpretation mechanism in place. And as I was speaking a little while ago about the moods, the anger, the sadness, and the fear, just by being aware of how you're run, what runs your life, it's like a big red flag flying in front of your face, so that when someone does something or she says something that makes you angry, what you now can look at is, okay, there's the flag, anger. What am I not seeing here about the situation? What is my interpretation about what was said or done? What can I reinterpret that supports me, that strengthens my relationship, that allows me to grow here? What can I say to diffuse a situation? What can I say to strengthen a bond, as opposed to being at the effect of other people's words and deeds? And when we're not aware of how we react emotionally, then we are in that reactive state. People do things, we become sad. People do things, we become fearful. People do things, we become angry. So if we don't realize that we're run by these emotions, then we're constantly responding to the world in a way that doesn't support us through a reactive nature. And because of the reactive nature, we damage our relationships, we minimize our charisma, we kill our effectiveness, and then we get to feel sorry for ourselves and we wonder why our life is the way it is. It's because we have not taken responsibility for living our best life, for responding in a way that supports us, as opposed to reacting negatively to the least provocation.
Well, let me ask you this. Is it really possible to live a life without any upset? And if so, please, doctor, share the secret.
Well, it is possible, and when I say an upset-free life, I'm talking about the chronic upset that we go through day in and day out, the reactive states. Someone passes away, the appropriate response is mourning. So we're not talking about that kind of an upset. We're talking about people who live their lives angrily, who are constantly reacting to other people who live in sadness, who are depressed all the time, people who are constantly worrying, or some version of one of those three moods. So yes, it is possible, and the secret is really to be rigorous about managing your interpretations moment by moment, so that when someone says or does something, you can interpret what was said in a way where you remove the insult, you remove the attack, and instead you now say, what must it be like over there for them to say or do that? And, isn't that interesting that they would respond that way, as opposed to, you can't do that, I'll show you, or whatever our typical response, reactive style is to their affront. So not only is it possible, but it's like a weak muscle. The more that we take on identifying how we listen reactively, with anger, sadness, or fear as the emotion that is the flag that keeps the whole thing in place, then we can start to reinterpret our life in a way where we can start to say, okay, she just said that. Instead of reacting, how can I now respond in a way that diffuses it? What must it be like in her world or his world for them to respond that way to me? How can I be more effective in this situation? So when you take it on as a personal development exercise, life transforms, you transform, and the people that you attract transform. It's kind of like doing a dance. As long as you do your dance in a certain way, you're going to evoke the dance that the other person's doing. You change your step, the other person has to change their step. So it's kind of like you can't continue to do what you're doing and expect different results. When you change who you are, you'll start attracting new energy consistent with your energy, and people will be in alignment with what you're putting out. So if you're putting out love, you'll attract love. If you're putting out hatred and vengeance and violence, you're going to attract that into your life. If you're putting out scarcity and doubt and fear, you're going to attract that into your life. And it's very powerful when you realize that you are absolutely responsible for what shows up around you.
Well, you say that we hate to be in, we don't like being in those states of fear, anger, sadness. Why is it that we find ourselves in those moods and states often?
Well, they're comfortable, they're addictive, as we mentioned, and they allow us some contrary benefit. So they allow us to avoid responsibility. If we're angry, for example, they make us feel personally powerful in the moment. We get to dominate someone else or avoid being dominated by them. If it's sadness, for example, we get to feel sorry for ourselves and evoke the sympathy and the pity of other people. You can't blame me. It's not my fault. I was sad. I was depressed. I can't help that, but we can. It's the same with fear. I was afraid. So typically it has us avoid being responsible for our lives and being proactive as opposed to reactive.
Excellent, thank you. Well, you speak about three keys to raising your self-esteem and about healing your past. And if I'm not mistaken, they're empathy, forgiveness, and is it gratitude?
Yes.
Well, let me ask, why is that so important?
Well, I've talked a little bit already about empathy, where you're putting yourself in the other person's world. You're understanding how and why people do the things that they do. Or you're at least getting some insight by putting yourself in their shoes so that you need not be reactive. So when you're no longer reactive, you now diffuse the situation. You get to feel better about who you are. You become more personally effective. Your charisma increases. You get to attract more people into your life. Forgiveness is key because we must first forgive ourselves in order to then forgive other people. I like to think of forgiveness as thank you for giving me the opportunity to learn and grow in empathy and wisdom and compassion. Because, we're so good at beating ourselves up that when we're used to invalidating ourselves instead of acknowledging ourselves, we can do so many things well, but, that we did that okay. But we do one thing wrong and we beat ourselves up. Well, it's the same with other people. They can do so many things well, but all we do is we listen for the flaw. We listen for someone to do something that will cause our reactive state to kick in. And when that happens, we damage our relationships and we kill our effectiveness. So by forgiving ourselves, we can now forgive others for the same flaws that we hold in ourselves, because we are more apt to notice those things in other people that bother us when we have them bother us about ourselves. So when we forgive, that leads the way to completion, to actual healing. Forgiveness is really key to the first step in the self-esteem system, which is healing and completing your past. When you can heal and complete your past by reinterpreting what you did that you're beating yourself up for and what you beat up other people for, you now have the ability to heal that past so that your energy is no longer focused in the past. You can move on to the present, and then you can design a future and choice. As long as you are incomplete with something, so that you haven't spoken to Uncle Phil since he did that to you 26 years ago.
Right.
Well, now maybe Uncle Phil has some problems, but it doesn't mean that you have to put yourself in harm's way. But you also don't have to stay angry, because the anger doesn't support you. It doesn't serve you to stay emotionally reactive. It doesn't support you, for example, to hate women, to hate men because someone did something to you. Forgiveness, here first, there second, completion. The third is gratitude. Gratitude is about having every day be Thanksgiving Day. It's about focusing on the blessings in our lives as opposed to the deficiencies. Because what we focus on, we make large. So that when we can actually focus on those things that we want to magnify, that we want to attract into our life, we now can be grateful for those things ahead of time. It's like pre-paving the things that we want. So that if we want to be abundant, we can be thankful for the abundance that we currently experience. We can be thankful for the relationships that we currently have. We can be thankful for the gifts that we have, that we are going to be manifesting more because we're more aware of them. Sadly, Bill, most people go their entire lives without being aware of what their gifts are. Just like I had for the first 36 years of my life. I didn't know that I could write, didn't know that I could inspire anyone because I wasn't inspiring myself, didn't know that I could speak. I had it that I was introverted, so I wasn't very good socially. And so I held myself in a way that kept me stuck and small. When I declared that I was creative and a contributor and inspirational and charismatic and could now look at, okay, if I'm going to inspire you, what can I say to do that? If I'm creative, how can I create? If I'm a contributor, how can I make your day a little bit better? we can step into the gratitude of the gifts that we can possess now and want to make larger, so that when we do that, we will attract those more to us. So it's all about shifting our focus from deficiency to blessings, making them large, stepping into them, declaring who we are, and then living that declaration.
That's great. Well, Joe, we all have these issues from the past, and what I want to know is, what is the true cost of that? Of if we just say, I don't want to dig those up. What is there a cost to not bringing those up at all?
Well, Bill, I hear that all the time, where people would rather just forget about it, whether it's an abusive situation or something that someone said or did early on in their lives that's just too painful for them to revisit. And as long as our focus is on what someone said or did that drains our energy, we're not focused on the present. We're unable to be powerful in the present, and we can't design a future in choice if our energy is on not being something that came up for us when we were 4 or 5 or 6 years old. So the cost is really tremendous, because if we're out to avoid being something, if that is being stupid, if that is being not good enough, whatever that is, then we're going to play small. We're going to avoid situations where the mere possibility of that thing that we made up about ourselves showing up will manifest. So the cost really is to our potential. We live a resigned state where we lose the joy in our lives. We don't live with passion because we can't be with the risk of having what it is that we made up about ourselves early on show up. So as a result of our failure to embrace life fully, to expect great things to happen, then we're really limiting our lives. So the cost really is in terms of our health, our happiness, our potential in the world, our ability to attract abundance and rich relationships, our ability to be most powerful and charismatic. The costs are really pervasive when we have it that we are a certain way that we can't live with, and so we're trying to avoid being that way.
Well, now let's bring up attitudes. I've heard a lot of people say, but I'm entitled to my emotions because you just don't understand. I've had a tough life. I've had this happen to me, that happened to me. And so many people use that as an excuse as to not raising their self-esteem. Can you talk a little bit about that? I'm sure you've dealt with that.
Yes.
And have some strategies to share with us.
Well, that addiction that we spoke about,
I do.
People like feeling like they're a victim. I was just on the phone yesterday with someone who shared his email address with me, and it was his diseases that he had contracted when he was a kid. And his email was this disease and this disease at yahoo.com. And I said, well, why do you have that as your email? And I knew why he had it as his email. It was because he just was into being a victim. He was so into having people feel sorry for him.
That's his identity.
That's his identity. So whenever we can't complete, then we keep it in place because we get to be right about something, we get to be a victim, we get to feel sorry for ourselves, those sorts of things.
Isn't that amazing what happens? Because so many times people identify and they stick like glue to, no, Joe, this is who I am. You don't understand. This is who I am, and their identity keeps them trapped. So with that, let me ask you and delve right into, because you are the author of so many books on self-esteem. Your trademark is the self-esteem book. Can you share with us a little bit from that and talk about that a little bit?
Well, as I mentioned, it has 3 parts: healing and completing your past, which is the key core to moving forward. Once we can be with the fact that we made mistakes, that other people made mistakes, and that we forgive ourselves, we forgive others, we can move on. We can reinterpret our lives in such a way that the mistakes were actually a contribution to us. They made us wiser, more empathetic. They had us see something that we wouldn't have seen, so we wouldn't have had the ability to contribute some gift to someone else. had we not been through that traumatic episode. So after we heal and complete our past, we now look to see what's so in our present. We assess what's so. By that, what I mean is we look at what are our core values? What are those things which form the fabric of our lives that are so important to us that when that fabric is pulled, when those values are dishonored, life becomes unmanageable. We get angry, we shut down our communication. We really don't want to play any longer. So most people go through life dishonoring their values, their most important key core values. So when we can identify what's most important to us, we now have the ability to say, okay, what values are being dishonored and what needs to shift? What's missing that if put into place would have me honor my most important values so that I'm actually living with integrity, where I'm actually walking my talk and doing those things that provide me with the most satisfaction and passion and fulfillment in my life. We take a look at what are our gifts? What are those things that make me unique and special? The things that I'm known for, the things that I could manifest into the world to leave a legacy, to really contribute to the lives of others, as opposed to playing small and just trying to get through life without getting hurt. The next area is our life purpose. You know, we all have one if we can declare one, or we can live the evidence that says you are this way. In contrast to the evidence, we can say my life purpose is to empower others, to bring joy to the world, to champion women, to make life easier for pets, to be a good friend, to share love or happiness or humor with the world. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be something. They're all great, but it doesn't
Where
have
do you
to be
look for
complicated.
that? I mean, you say that, and you know our viewers might be saying, "But those are good things. But where do I start? I want to start somewhere. Give me a technique. Where do I start as a viewer?"
You look at, if you could live the next 300 years of your life, what would be something that you would love to do so that you could get up every day and be empowered to do that? As opposed to having to do things. Instead of the shoulds or the obligations or the imposed values, what are those values that are most important to you that you'd love to do? What are those things that you're known for? What are the things that people say, oh, that Bill, he makes everybody around him feel good. Whenever he's in the room, you know that you're gonna be raised up a notch because that's just who he is. Or, you know, that guy Tom, he's just full of humor and quick wit. He just makes me laugh. That's his gift to the world. His life purpose is to make the world a little bit of a happier place. Or, you know, that Sally, she's just a champion of other women. She just loves to make women's lives more empowered and better. Or whatever that gift is that you love doing. Some people love pets. They could just go every day loving pets, helping them to find new homes, making sure that they're treated well. Something that really speaks to who you are at your core that you would love to do. And when you find that life purpose, you will live the rest of your life passionately because it's who you are. You're honoring your values, you're manifesting your gifts, you're living just out of a dream that you've declared, and now you're stepping into that dream.
So maybe that's something that when you work with people, do you have them write that out in a journal? Mm-hmm. And so I guess my question might be is, all right, we all want a higher level of self-esteem. I don't think anybody has ever plateaued on self-esteem. I don't think you can do that. Mm-hmm. So where would you, the viewers, start a life of living at a higher self-esteem level?
Well, you're right. You can never get too much self-esteem. And I want to take a moment here to correct a fallacy. And that is that you can have too much self-esteem. So many people misinterpret self-esteem with ego. They think that we shouldn't champion our kids because we'll turn them into egomaniacs. By my definition, part of the definition of having high self-esteem is an appreciation for others, appreciation for the world of others, the ability to get along well with others and to contribute your gifts to them and receive their gifts to you. So those people that are just about the self, they have high ego. They do not have high self-esteem. So one gift that I have for everyone who's listening is I'd invite you to go to www.selfesteemsystem.com There's a 45-minute audio that I created called 7 Steps to Soaring Self-Esteem. It's totally free. It comes with a free membership in what we call the Success Club, which has all sorts of free audios and ebooks and tips and things to champion your life. And it's just as a thank you for checking out our work. What I would do as a starting point is to take on the 3 aspects of the self-esteem system: healing and completing your past, assessing your future, assessing your present, and then the third, which I haven't talked about, which is designing your future. You design your future by having a vision, a new vision for your life. You know, we all have a current vision for our lives, and all we have to do is look around ourselves and see if what we're manifesting is in alignment with what we want. If it's not, then we could be well served to have a new vision for our lives. A vision is about what would life look like if you had a magic wand and you could wave it over your life, and your life could be ideal. It could be empowered and empowering. It could be fulfilled and happy. It could be rich with relationships. It could be abundant, not just abundant, but opulent, where you have so much money that you could do such great causes. You can contribute to the people and the causes that you wanted. You could just live without scarcity, without restriction, because you could do so much good in the world. What would that look like? Now, part of the work that we do is we support people to create these written visions as if you are watching a movie of your life 5, 10 years from now, 1 year from now, whatever that is, where you could see what your life is looking like. Who would you live with? What would you be doing on a typical day at work or at play? Who would you be surrounding yourself with? What would you have in every aspect of your life? Who would you be contributing your gifts to? So it's about doing and being and having and contributing. It's about really manifesting your gifts in your life, living that life purpose that we discussed, living with passion, honoring those values, really communicating what it is that's most important to you, and just having life work optimally.
Wow, that's impressive. And I know that you've coached thousands of people. I've talked to a bunch of the people that you have coached, and I know you have that system in place to raise people's self-esteem, and you're generously giving a gift to the viewing audience. So again, is it self-esteem? What is it?
Selfesteemsystem.com.
Selfesteemsystem.com. Well, Joe, we're just about out of time right now, but let me ask you this: if there's something that I haven't asked you that you wish that I asked, or is there any parting words that you can tie this whole thing up with?
Yes. If you are like I was 20 years ago, where you were resigned to not living your best life, if you're struggling or suffering, and of course, suffering is having something you don't want or wanting something you don't have. So if you're at all in that resigned state where you think that the abundance is for other people, or the rich relationships, or the fulfillment, or the happiness, or the living with passion, all the things that we talked about, you're saying, yeah, but you don't know who I am. I'm going to invite you to suspend your disbelief in yourself for 1 minute and to just pick up the free 45-minute audio, 7 Steps to Soaring Self-Esteem. It comes with a 7 mini course, free 7 lessons of a mini course on elevating different aspects of your self-esteem. And I invite you to not settle for less, not to live in that resignation where your life energy is muted, where you've decided that happiness or fulfillment or all of the things that are most important to you, you've put over there on the shelf because you've said, well, not in this lifetime for me, because you don't know my past, you don't know the challenges that I have. It's never too late. One thing that I've noticed is that whenever you make a declaration of who you are and what your new vision is, the resources show up magically in the universe, doors open, people start to come into your life to support you. But it takes courage. It takes a decision, a declaration, and the courage to step into both. It takes baby steps at first, but unless you're willing to have the courage to take some action, the action doesn't have to be perfect action. You know, we think that someday it'll be right, but it's never quite right now, so we don't act. The timing will never be right. All you have is the present to act. My invitation to you is to take some action in the direction of manifesting your best life, whether it's to listen to the audio, whether it's to do some of the exercises in the free mini course, whether it's to hire a coach. Do something that will move you off of where you've been stuck and into a new possibility. And what you'll see is that when you take some action, the universe, God, however you want to phrase that, will be there to support you, to open those doors, to empower you, to learn more, to see things where you thought you were stopped, new possibilities will open. So that would be my invitation. I'd like to thank everyone for watching us today and to encourage you to not give up, to decide now to live your best life and to make that happen.
So it's all about taking that action, because and when you build on the momentum, isn't it? Because one step builds, take that imperfect action until you gradually get better and better and better, and your self-esteem goes up and up and up. It soars, doesn't it?
It soars, and before you know it, your life is transformed.
Dr. Joe, I appreciate your time that you spent with us, and I look forward to raising my own self-esteem with your help.
Thank you, Bill.
So thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.